We're now a month into War 126, and the first nuke site has been constructed by the Colonials in Westgate. The Colonials have aimed their warhead at the Manacle, the capital city of King's Cage. The Wardens still have a chance to respond though, and an opportunity to destroy the nuke site located in Westgate before it launches this weekend. The Wardens last weekend had an incredible campaign full of territorial gains, but now things are starting to slip, and the Wardens are losing the ground they fought so hard to claim. At least Stemma Landing, the island we battled for during the intense 9-hour landing operation, still remains under Warden control. After a fight like that, I knew I needed a break from the front lines, so I shifted gears and focused on some Logi tasks for the week. The first task I took on was supplying the seaport of El Camino Estate in Stemma Landing. We had just taken control of the island, so it was in desperate need of supplies. Fortunately for us, we had recently rebuilt the seaport, factory, and refinery, giving us a solid foundation to start production. One of the best things about doing Logi on an island like this is how compact the setup is. The salvage mines, refinery, and factory are all within about 300 meters of each other. You can gather salvage, drive 15 seconds to the refinery to process it into basic materials, then head just 10 seconds over to the factory to start crafting supplies. I normally focus on essentials like shirts, ammo, radios, and binoculars. You can use this Logi calculator, which I will link in the description of this video, to figure out how many basic materials you'll need for different items in a single factory run. While your supplies are cooking, you can head back to the salvage mines to gather more and keep feeding the loop. Rinse and repeat until the mines are depleted or the refinery runs out of B-mats. El Camino Estate, the Conclave, Isawa, and the Old Captain all have this kind of setup. I always recommend to new players that if you want to learn the basic Logi loop, that these islands are a great place to start. Not only can you treat them like a tutorial, but as you are learning, your efforts are actually helping us in the war as well. Another reason I enjoy this setup is how little downtime there is. You're almost always moving, gathering, refining, crafting, so there's no long waiting around for queues to finish. Eventually, the salvage mines may run dry from how efficient the loop is. It's good to have nearby salvage fields in mind to keep the public BMAT queue active. What made this task special for me was that just last weekend, I was fighting tooth and nail to capture this island. Now it's a fully operational, functioning Logi hub that's helping fuel the war. And the last nice thing about doing this solo Logi task is that you can determine how long you want to do it. Each factory run takes about 5 to 10 minutes depending on what items you're making, so you can normally do 3 or 4 factory runs and still only play for about 30 minutes. The next Logi task I tackled this week was a freighter run from Isawa and Godscraft to the port of Rhyme and Silken Shelf. I had noticed that the seaport in Isawa had a good stack of shirts and 40mm ammo, which are in high demand for tanks around this time of the war, and it looked as though the port of Rhyme was running low on both, so I decided to load up a freighter and make the run. Islands aren't just useful for controlling the seas, they're also great for producing equipment we can ship to the mainland to support our offensives there. With Silken Shelf under heavy colonial pressure lately, it made sense to reinforce it with supplies. One challenge with doing island Logi though is the constant lack of shipping containers. Because items are always being moved off the island, there often aren't enough containers left behind. I only found a couple in the seaport, so I had to build a new one to fully load my freighter with 5 shipping containers. It was actually a fun little project, especially with getting help from this little guy. Has anyone come up with a name for him yet? Once the shipping container was built, I started loading the freighter. Honestly, pulling items from the public stockpile is the slowest and most frustrating part about this job. It took me about 30 minutes just to load all 5 shipping containers. I passed the time by grabbing some free weights from my office and doing a bit of lifting while I waited. I like to call those Logi gains. I ended up with 2 shipping containers of shirts, 2 containers of 40mm shells, and 1 final container with a mix of supplies the Port of Rhyme needed: 7.62 ammo, rifles, gas grenades, radios, regular grenades, and some B-mats. Now that my freighter was fully loaded, it was time for the transportation part of this journey to start. I asked in region chat if the waters were clear, and got a warning that a colonial gunboat had recently sunk one of our freighters. To stay safe, I hugged the coastline and passed near islands with defenses. If I got caught, all those supplies would be lost. I had managed to travel safely to the Port of Rhyme and dropped off all of my supplies. In total, I gave the Port of Rhyme seaport 7,240mm shots, 2,000 B-mats, 1,200 shirts for respawning, 320 clips of 7.62 ammo, 200 rifles, 100 gas grenades, 50 radios, and 40 regular grenades. The entire task took me about 50 minutes, 30 of which were spent pulling from the public stockpile. While it's definitely faster to use regiment or private stockpiles, sometimes you just need to make sure the public stockpile gets put to good use. And remember that all of this was delivered by one solo player. A drop like this can really make a difference on the front lines, and at least I got a decent workout in while I was pulling supplies.
You got me into the game.
Oh, that's cool to hear. Awesome. And you're with
the HNS video?
Yeah, that's awesome. How you enjoying them?
Oh, dude, great. I just got promoted to officer.
Oh, so congrats. For my next task, I noticed that one of our Midline refineries, located in the city of Fading Light and Stone Cradle, wasn't cooking any BMATs. I think it's crucial these Midline refineries always have at least 3,000 to 5,000 BMATs stocked in the public pile. These materials are essential for building forward bases, constructing defenses, and repairing tanks. The two front lines closest to Fading Light are King's Cage and the Linn of Mercy. Both of these regions are constantly active and always burning through BMATs. They also each have factories in their capital cities, which makes midline BMAT production even more valuable for frontline supply crafting. When I spawned in, I quickly realized there weren't any Logi or resource trucks available. Personally, I think every midline refinery should always have at least 2 to 3 dedicated resource trucks parked nearby, ready for any player that wants to haul some salvage, but since none were available, I grabbed a bus and went on a hunt for a truck. Eventually I found a resource truck and got to work gathering salvage. Luckily, Fading Light is surrounded by several salvage mines. I hit every one of them until they're tapped out. During one of my runs, I noticed that the public diesel fuel stockpile was low. Only about 30 cans were left, so I threw one of my salvage loads into the diesel public queue. I like to keep that number around 100 at minimum to ensure other players in the region have fuel for their tasks. Not counting the time it took me to find the truck, this task took me about 15 minutes to complete, and once all the salvage was done cooking in the refinery, Fading Light would have 5k BMATs to use. While working, I spotted a super heavy tank being rearmed nearby, and members of the Warden Regiment SSE preparing to roll out with it. It's always a cool moment to see vehicles like this getting prepped while doing Logi. It reminds me that everyone plays a role in this war, whether you're hauling salvage, loading shells into a tank, or driving a super heavy tank into battle. It all matters. Since I borrowed this resource truck from a base outside the city, I made sure to return it when I was done. Make sure you always return your trucks if you didn't get them from a seaport or storage depot. For my next task, I kind of cheated and went to the front line. There was a massive colonial attack hitting Vulpine and Silcan Shelf, and World Chat was calling out for more builders to keep the base alive. I decided to head to the front, not to fight, but to focus entirely on keeping the base standing. When I arrived, the first thing I saw was destroyed structures everywhere. It was clear there was going to be a lot of rebuilding to do. I also noticed that we had one of the new underground bases set up right next to our bunker. Maybe that would help slow the Colonials down. Unfortunately, Colonial artillery had our position zeroed in, and the shelling was non-stop. At the same time, their tank line was pushing hard down the main road, inching closer and closer to our base. We had a decent tank line of our own trying to hold them back, while we rushed to rebuild the defenses. Both sides even had super heavy tanks. It was shaping up to be another classic World of Tanks showdown. There were some great builders holding the line with me, doing everything they could to patch up things and rebuild as fast as possible. Sorry if anyone on this front tried to say hi to me while I was there. Unfortunately, I had the voice bug where I couldn't hear anyone or talk to anyone. As night fell, our tanks kept doing their best to hold the line while we worked behind them, reinforcing what we could. We continued to rebuild and rebuild what we could back at the base. Thankfully, the region had plenty of B-mats, and Volpine had a storage depot located in the city as well. I was able to make a quick Logi run to the storage depot to supply our forward bunker with more B-mats. So because I did this Logi task, it still fits the theme for the video, right? The rest of the night was spent rebuilding, over and over, doing everything we could to keep the base alive under constant pressure. We were able to hold the base that day, but we know the Colonials will come back and we'll be ready for them. After I finished rebuilding the bunker base, I went to the backline. The last Logi task I worked on this week was cleaning up my main Logi city for the war, Tyne and Speaking Woods. I first noticed that 3 salvage mines I usually pull from had all run out of petrol, so I replaced 2 of the empty fuel containers with fresh petrol to get the mines back up and running efficiently. This took me about 12 minutes. Next, I noticed the mass production factory had several storage crates of shipping containers, so I grabbed a flatbed and started hauling them over to the seaport to give our freighter Logi players more shipping containers to use. This is always a good task to take on when you see lots of crates filled with Logi trucks or tanks just sitting idle in the MPF. I only moved 3 crates, but it only took me about 8 minutes. If I wanted to finish the other 10 crates that were left in there, it probably would have taken me another 20 to 25 minutes. This is an example that sometimes you don't have time to do it all, and that's okay. After that task, I saw that most of the spawn points in Tyne were low or completely out of radios. As a Logi player, I love having a radio while doing work in the backline, so I can check in on the front lines and see what's going on. So I pulled some B-mats from the refinery and queued up 2 batches of radios in the factories. While waiting for the radios, I knocked out a quick side quest by moving some leftover crates from the factories to the seaport. I ended up cooking 40 radios in total for one of the spawn points in town, and the whole process took me about 5 minutes. And finally, I wrapped up the night by making some equipment for my regiment, the 27th. The 27th has an awesome Logi system where they post production requests in an Excel sheet, so you know exactly what to craft to support the regiment and the front. They even track your contributions with a leaderboard that shows everything you've made, how many resources you've provided them, and how much equipment you've transported. I love joining the 27th every now and then to compete on this leaderboard. It adds a fun and motivating layer to doing Logi. Honestly, I wish more regiments had a system like this. It would boost production, give players clear goals, and track cool stats that the game itself doesn't. If you're interested in joining the 27th, I'll leave a link to their Discord in the description below. As I wrapped up my orders for the night, I felt really good about all the Logi work I had accomplished this week. I hope you all had a great week in Foxhole as well. I think this war is shaping up to be a long one. We will see what happens if this nuke drops this weekend. With this being a longer war, make sure you take breaks when needed and don't get burnt out. Thank you all so much for watching and for your support. Make sure to subscribe for more Foxhole content. I'll see you out on the battlefield. Cheers.